I will start by introducing Chuck Kamandra, who's going to provide us with a declaration as we had discussed last week at Committee of the Whole. So Chuck's joining us by telephone. Chuck, if you can hear us, perhaps you'd like to go right on ahead into the declaration.
Well, thank you, Nikki. Good afternoon, all. So I'll just get right into it. On this 27th day of September 2021, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. Before settlers arrived, this territory was subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee nations to peaceably share and care for the resources. After settlers arrived, it became subject to the Three Figures Wampum Belt, last carried by Algonquin Elder William Commanda, which commemorates the sharing of this land with English, French, and Indigenous nations under the governance of natural law. We recognize with gratitude the knowledge Smiths Falls and contributions of the Algonquin peoples bring to the municipality of Smiths Falls. Today, Smiths Falls is also home to other Indigenous nations from across Turtle Island. We extend our respect to all First Nations, Inuit, Métis people for their valuable past and present contributions. We are mindful of the broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of the generations to come. Oho Matakwias, all my relations.
Thank you very much, Chuck.
Thank you.
Excuse me. I'll start with attendance this evening. We do have all members of council in attendance. CAO Moore, could you staff, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We have a number of staff with us tonight, starting with Carrie Costello. We have Janet Kozil with us, Art Manhire. Carl Grenke is here, along with Mary Remig. And of course, Nadine Bennett is here. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. I'll call for amendments to the agenda. Seeing none, I actually have one. With council's consensus, I'd like to suggest that we move items 8.3 and 8.4 to the front end of the agenda. I think given the weight of those discussions, it might be best to get through them first and then move into the CIP and the budget after that time. So unless I see an objection, we'll proceed as follows. Okay, disclosure of monetary interest tonight. I see none. As a reminder, if you discover that you do need to disclose monetary interest later in the proceedings, please feel free to do so as the item comes up for discussion. Nadine will make note of it in our record. We have no delegations tonight. I will call for an adoption of the minutes for August 16th, September 7th, and September 13th, 2021 of the meetings of Committee of the Whole to be received and filed. Do I have a mover? Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Alfred. All those in favor? Thank you. Moving on into CAOs and directors reports. I understand we have one this evening. Mr. Manhire?
Yes, Madam Chair. Sorry, I was waiting for somebody to say go ahead. I just wanted to let council know that the basketball courts work has been completed. It was painted over the weekend. and people are out using the courts, and they do look quite nice. So I'd encourage everybody to go out and take a look. The other park improvements that are happening now is also the installation of benches along the Centennial Park side of the Victoria Park Basin. That's the part where we have received approval from Parks Canada to do the install. We continue to seek approval from Parks Canada to do install of other benches along the waterfront, and as soon as we have that, we will be bringing the locations forward for public.
Thank you, Mr. Manhire. Any questions or comments from council? Councillor Brennan, followed by Councillor Mcguire.
Yeah, I've got just a comment on the b-ball courts. Director Manhire, I walked down there on Sunday after they opened, and they were full of kids, and I actually stopped and took a couple pictures, and one of the parents were there, and he said that their kids, it's the only place they want to go. They look great, and it's a great addition to Lower Reach, and whenever I'm down there, it's there's someone there. It doesn't matter what day of the week or what time. So great addition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mcguire.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Brennan. We're getting so much positive feedback on those courts. It's great. Down in my neighborhood, we've got the skate park, and now that it's getting darker earlier, I'm sure those kids would like the lights on. Sometimes I walk by there and it's not lit. Are we turning the lights on there? Could we start turning them on till 10 p.m. or so?
We do have those lights are on a timer, and we can put them on. Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. I will say, I mean, I'm pretty sure my kids are at that basketball court right now. I think it is probably the most utilized park space that we have in town. It's such a great asset. I think our only detriment was that perhaps we didn't expand it to include 2 more court surfaces, because it's just packed. But you know, it caused me to reflect this weekend when we were down there using it, that kids in this town, as much as sometimes we hear a lot of bad press about Smiths Falls in general and Smiths Falls youth, I think it shows that when you produce assets that kids are proud of, they will take care of it, they will behave respectfully, and our asset becomes that much more valuable to our community because it causes that sense of pride to swell. My hope is that before the end of this term, we can continue with our mandate to include better improvements in all of our parks, so that that same phenomenon can be spread within the community to other assets as well. But thank you, Art. It's a great asset, and I think everybody's really, really proud to see that project done. Moving on, because I don't believe there are any more CAOs or directors reports, we do have 2 correspondence items that we are receiving tonight. I'll read them first, both. The first item is a letter from the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 95. The topic is a program to honor veterans. The second is a letter from Beth Sinclair, dated September 8th, 2021. The topic is adapting the property standards bylaw to allow homeowners to participate in naturalizing their yards and creating pollinator gardens. Both, I believe, are actionable items. And I believe, having spoken with staff, that they will both be coming forward with council's consensus at a future meeting of committee of the whole for consideration through staff reports. Are there any questions or comments from council on these items? Councillor Alfred?
Just one, Madam Chair, with regard to the potential conflict with the DBA banners. In the letter from the Legion, it enhances Main Street. I'm assuming that's Main Street East and West, or just if staff could clarify that when they bring this forward. If it's just Main Street, then probably there is no conflict.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mcguire?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Another question I'd have is it optional to replace the Union Jack with an Ontario flag or a red ensign or something that's a little more relevant to our community?
Thank you, Councillor. I'm sure staff can comment further when they bring back the staff report in a week or 2. But your comments duly noted for the record. Seeing no other hands up on these issues, We'll proceed down the agenda. Item 7 is in-camera issues, and we have none tonight. So we will head straight into 8 being priority issues. And based on the amendment earlier in the agenda, we're actually going to start with item 8.3, the Town Square Design Progress Update and Design Report 2021-133 with Mr. Manhire. Art, is there anything new or what you would like to summarize from the staff report before we discuss and debate?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I was having trouble with my microphone. I do have just an intro piece that I would like to go through, and that may help in terms of forming some of the discussion. So we're looking for direction from council on the town square design. The design was done as a part of a 2017 concept plan that was done in conjunction with the concepts for the town hall renovation, and included cost estimates as well as design features. In discussion with the previous council, it was decided that the cost as well as the design were not quite what the town was looking for. And so a landscape plan, or the landscape part of that plan, was not pursued. The town square was identified as a priority under the current council and listed as strategic priorities 6.2 and 6.6 in the strategic plan. With some resources identified, staff engaged a landscape architect to work with groups to come up with a design as a starting point for the discussions. A different contractor was engaged to do the design for the bandstand, as we had initiated that process earlier. Both the design projects were completed in absence of funding, as the funds available at $98,294 were not going to be adequate for either component of the project, given the increased costs of materials and contractors at this time. So staff, in the meantime, have secured some funding to required for some of the hardscape components of the park. And as a result, we are pursuing some of the hardscape components a bit earlier than planned, as it was identified in the strategic plan to happen in 2022. But it does fit with the overall concept, where we need to have this stuff in place in order to be able to put the bandstand in place once that design is completed. So the item 6.2 is listed in as the bandstand. It was budgeted to approximately $100,000. As of yet, we still don't have a final cost estimate from the supplier. There have been several issues that have negatively impacted the estimate and timeline, as well as the overall cost of the project. Item 6.6, as I mentioned earlier, is listed as the second phase of the town square and is scheduled to be delivered in 2022. The pieces attached to the report tonight, I believe, reflect direction from the Municipal Heritage Committee as well as the Accessibility Committee. There was direction to change the ramp on the bandstand, as well as some of the benches around the bandstand, the spindles and the railings, as well as the trim around the roof line. Those changes are reflected in the attached drawing, the Smiths Falls revised with ramp. There was direction around the height of the bandstand, so that there was the base was not prominent, but the floor level of the bandstand was visible for surrounding park areas. So we settled on a height of 18 inches that was suggested, and that is reflected in this drawing. If council would like to give direction on changes to design, we can have those elements incorporated. If council is comfortable with the design and recommendations from the committees, then we can move ahead with the project.
Thank you, Art. Okay, council. I think I saw Lorraine's hand go up first. So Councillor Allen, I'm going to start with you.
A few questions. Thank you. I was part of those discussions. The Municipal Heritage Committee picked one of the styles, but on your paper you have given us 3, Director Manhire. So are you asking our input even after they've given their advice, or what's the situation?
Sorry, there are 3, but those 3 are just different aspects of the same design. So
Right,
you'll note,
the spindles that the committee chose were the ones that looked like the old one, curved ones. And my
yes,
second part of that question is, because it hasn't gone as high as originally planned, do we need a railing on the ramp? Could the ramp not just go into the parking lot? It's a very, very small incline, and if it went a little further out, I think you'd eliminate the need of having all of that ramping around the beautiful bandstand piece. Those are just my thoughts and my questions.
Okay.
And the other thing is, what's a paver?
it's stones that you would put, interlocking stones.
Because in this sheet that you gave us, again, it's the old sheet that we had before, and it doesn't show the butterfly gardens, so it's hard to figure out what the changes are there. And my last part of that is, if we put pavers in and concrete and then put the bandstand in, are we not going to have damage done?
The idea is that we have to put the pavers and the bandstand in. The hardscape components go into the project first, and then you build on top of that. So we do that, and then the plantings. And the plantings for the butterfly gardens, as an example, was done because we did that in conjunction with Real, and Real had a timeline on their funding and their projects. So we moved ahead with that, with the idea that we could work around those components in the design.
Okay, Councillor Allen, were there outstanding questions there that you need answers to?
Well,
No? Okay, perfect. So we'll park that for a second.
I just want to confirm that the three aspects of that drawing that are incorporated, that are included in the package, they are all the same. If you see on the first one at the top left corner, it does reflect those bowed spindles that were suggested in the Municipal Heritage Committee. It's hard to see from the angle, but you can see on the right side of them, you can see the bowed aspect of those spindles.
Thank you, Mr. Manhire. Okay, Councillor Mcguire, you had your hand up next.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm disappointed it's taken over 6 months for this to come to council again. We had the Municipal Heritage Committee and the Accessibility Committee have special meetings. The same week the council met to rush this through, and I don't think it's acceptable that we can use those committees that way and then sleep on it for this long. I agree with both of Councillor Allen's comments on the bandstand. I don't think the 18 inches is high enough to give it the prominence it needs. Because it's under 24 inches, we wouldn't need a railing on a bandstand or on the ramp, and the ramp, it might be better to have it discreetly point towards the parking lot. So if the band's trying to set up, there's an easy access path there. Overall, I'd like to split this conversation into two parts, because I think the bandstand's one conversation, the design of the park is a whole other conversation. Overall, the bandstand seems to be incorporating all of the comments received, and it looks like it's in good shape and it's ready to go. But I've got significant concerns with the design, so I'm not sure if I should share those now or if we should.
Thank you, Councillor Mcguire. I think that's a great suggestion. Perhaps we'll split it. We'll do the roundtable for council, and then I'll circle back to you for the landscaping component. Okay.
Okay, great. So just last comment on, we don't have any lighting, and the Municipal Heritage Committee is still concerned with the lighting. So, something like this, pot lighting or something like that, isn't going to be adequate. So we're still waiting to hear back on what's going to be suggested there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Anybody else from council have comments? Councillor Alfred?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I like the bandstand design. I think that the way they've wrapped rather than have it straight out, I like the way they've sort of wrapped it around and minimized the amount of land that has to be used up for that ramp. I'm okay with 18 inches, and I know maybe you don't have to have a railing on anything that's under 24 inches, but I would prefer to see one if you're going up that in a wheelchair even 18 inches can be a recipe for disaster should something happen. So I prefer to see the railings. I like all the other things that have been incorporated from both the MHC and council when we discussed this last time. So I'm okay with the bandstand the way that it is, other than it's a fair point to make sure that the lighting is compatible with a heritage looking bandstand. That would be the only thing. Other than that, I'm fine with it.
Thank you, Councillor Alfred. Mayor Penko, you're next.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Banner, a couple of questions, I guess, and statements. I would have preferred a higher elevation to the floor and create more prominence, but I'm wondering, what is the overall height from ground level to the peak of the roof?
That's a good question. I don't know what the peak of the roof from ground level is. Once the design is completed, one of the challenges we've had is actually availability of roof trusses, and the contractor has not been able to secure a truss company to build them. So we don't have a final on what that peak is. The structure itself is 12 feet high. So you're probably looking at 14 feet high for the peak.
Yeah, at least I would say. Okay.
Yeah.
And so it is a concrete foundation and concrete floor. What's the finish proposed for the floor?
A brushed finish so that it's secure for people to walk on.
Okay. And is there? I don't see any furniture. Is furniture to be benches to be added after, rather than being built into the structure?
Yeah, there's no through the chair. There's no seating on the bandstand itself. There is seating around the perimeter of the bandstand on the pavers. So
again, it raises the question: why wouldn't we have seating there so people can sit there and enjoy their lunch, enjoy a coffee, and enjoy the environment experience?
We could, and part of the discussion with the various groups was the size of the bandstand and what needed to be there. So if we put permanent benches in, it would interfere with performance space for other uses. So there was some discussion both ways around the size of the space itself. And this is just over 24 feet in diameter.
If we had seats, benches around the perimeter, each, I mean, they were talking 2 foot depth of the seat, I suppose, 4 feet off the diameter roughly. We're still 20 feet of performance space. And I think I would recognize that as performance space, this would be used hopefully fairly frequently, but I tend to believe that probably 95 to 98% of the usage are actually people just sitting here reading a book, having a coffee, just relaxing and enjoying the environment. So I'd like to make sure that it's designed to accommodate those preferences as well.
Thank you, Sean. Councillor Brennan, you're next.
Yeah, thanks for this. And I think that I'm fine with the design of the bandshell. I know my friend Tom would be happy with it too. I think that's what he had envisioned. If you look at the one that he visited with his good wife, and I think it was Elmira, this mirrors that, and it we have to remember that he made a significant donation. So I'm fine with it. We can talk about the height of whatever. That's all sort of, the details or the devil is in the details. But overall, I think it's a great design, I would mirror the one in Elmira, and I think it's been very successful, obviously, and Tom would be happy with this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McKenna?
Yeah, I'm fine with the design too, and I appreciate Mayor Penko's comments about having a place to sit inside there. However, I do recognize that it is a performance space first, and so I do think adding seating in there would be challenging at this point. I don't think it was. Maybe you did bring it up before, Mayor Penko. I don't recall that, but it coming in at this time, this late with the design change like that, I think it would seriously impact the integrity of the plan. So I'm just going to disagree with you on that one. Hopefully when people come out to this venue, certainly when there's performances, they can bring lawn chairs and things like that, but I don't know. So I'm happy with the way it is as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. Mayor Penko, I think you have a rebuttal.
Yeah, just with respect, my sense is going to be a popular gathering spot. And if we don't have places for people to sit, they'll be sitting on the railings. And the risk of falling, a risk of damage to the railing. I mean, people are it's a beautiful spot. People will gather there. And I think we need to find a way to accommodate that. And whether that is benches that can fold up out of the way or something. It's going to be a natural spot for people to gather. And if we don't accommodate them, they'll find their own way to enjoy it, but it may not be the safest and most appropriate manner, is my feeling.
Okay, thank you, Sean. I see Lorraine's hand, and Wendy, I have seen yours, so I acknowledge that. But Lorraine, go ahead.
With what was just been said, I wouldn't want them to be built into it or permanent, because it is a bandstand, and hopefully we'll have bands and choirs and entertainers in it, in our park entertaining. And I like the idea of having benches in the park and sitting areas in the park watching that event, but perhaps having movable ones that are easy to move in and out of the, under the site of it. It would accommodate that other aspect that the mayor's talking about.
Okay, thanks, Lorraine. Councillor Alford?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too am going to disagree with our esteemed mayor. I think you're right. People will gather there, and there are benches on the perimeter to enjoy the environment. But if it is first and foremost a performance space, and having seen and participated and having a son who's done outdoor performances, you need every square inch of 24 feet to be able to put a drum kit in. And I just see it more as a performance space. And so I too am going to disagree with our mayor.
Thank you. Chris, before we come back to you on the landscaping component, I'm going to jump in on the band shell. I'm okay with the band shell as presented. I think the design of it is empathetic to the architectural character of the adjacent buildings, and I think it is consistent with the vision that was originally proposed for the structure. So I appreciate the efforts that were made to look at removing one of the ramps in favor of stairs. I think that adds nice symmetry to the space. And like Councillor Alfred, I too have performed in bandstands as part of music ensembles, and I'll echo the fact that these spaces are tight, and when you get a jazz band in there, hopefully one day we do have a jazz band in there. I mean, it's something that, the more space you have to play with, sorry, I've got a cat behind me, the better. The only question I would have on that aspect, Art, is whether or not we're fully equipping the bandstand with electrical that would have the capacity of facilitating amps, all sorts of lights, things like that. Recording equipment?
Yes, that is part of the design plan. So.
Okay, perfect. Beyond that, I agree with Councillor Alfred again that I think there's sufficient seating around the perimeter. And like we even see today, I mean, it's not uncommon to see people with their own lawn furniture out at these spaces. It can be more comfortable and more accessible to their needs. So I think having some flex space where people can do that makes sense. And I think that the plan that we see right now not only includes that within the bandstand itself, but also in the open green space around it. So I'm supportive of the plan as proposed. Now, Councillor Mcguire has asked to speak specifically about the landscaping, so we'll circle back to that, and then I'll call for another round of questions on that topic. So, Councillor Mcguire, go ahead.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I had a couple more questions, comments on the bandstand after it went around.
Fair enough,
it's
go
a great
ahead.
idea to have furniture in it, but maybe if we could purchase some stuff that we could lock or install and remove, but just permanent benches, I agree, wouldn't be ideal there, but it'd be great to have something there when people aren't performing. For the 24 inches, I think I saw Mayor Panko, Councillor Allen, is there any other interest in raising this up a little higher to make it a little more prominent in that square, or is that one failing?
I don't see a lot of support for that, Chris, but
last one is the in the design, the concrete base is hidden by this green stuff. And I'm just wondering, is that going to be stamped, or is there going to be a finish there? Or is it just going to be set concrete?
It's totally up to council as to what we do. We can put evergreens in there so that it is green year round. But it's the design of the bandstand at this point can be modified. So if there is something that council wants to see, we can certainly do or look at having that incorporated. But the idea was to have that as an etched surface and then have evergreens in front of it as a way to soften the edge of that surface. And that's, I know the conversation has been there already with council, but it was reflective of the design that people wanted initially. So the handles or the spindles and the rails are there because it reflected the integrity of the initial design that was brought forward. Not because it needed to be there necessarily by code, but you're quite correct that anything over 24 inches would require it. Anything under does not technically, but I would be concerned about the way that people use the space at that point. So, but there is some flexibility here if council wants to provide some direction on what to incorporate.
Great. I'd like to put it out there. If we gave it a stone look on the bottom, it would tie it together better. But I put that out there to my colleagues.
Okay, sorry. I see 2 thumbs up. You know what, Chris, I'm going to document all the suggestions, and then I'm actually going to do a straw vote at the end just so we can keep track. But you indicated that you've got quite a few comments here, so you just keep going. Straw vote on each of them at the end, if that's okay with council.
Okay, so we're moving on from bandstand onto the park layout. Councillor McKenna's got a.
Sorry, Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, I'm still on the bandstand. Well, the report that we've gotten, it says that the recommendation from staff is the council approve the final draft design of the bandstand, and now Director Manhire is telling us that there's lots of time to still make changes. So I'm just confused. So are you recommending that we approve the final layout with this modest input tonight, or not? You're saying we should just keep going and keep modifying?
It's just the feedback that we received from council prior to this was individual ideas. And what I would like would be a consensus from council on what they would like to see. And that can then be incorporated. So that at that point, then, we have a deliverable plan.
Okay, so yeah, I took you quite literally on your recommendation that we approve the final draft design for the bandstand. So there's still flexibility. Thank you.
Thanks. And for the record, my intention, perhaps this helps answer Councillor McKenna's point, but my intention was to give final reading to the recommendation as proposed by staff with a series of addendums as determined by council should they be needed. Councillor Alfred, I saw your hand, sorry, I've got a lot of background noise in here. I saw your hand go up.
Just to,
On the
my
same
own-
point,
let's put a pin in this thing tonight in terms of the bandstand so that we can move forward. That's my only comment.
thank you. Okay. Councillor Mcguire, I'm going to go back to you and I am going to let you go because I'm going to turn my microphone off here. But I'll take notes and then call for comments from council at the end, okay?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So the last time we discussed this, I thought there was really great input from the committee, but unfortunately the design that's come tonight is very, very similar to what we saw back in March. So as a summary of what we saw in or what we gave as feedback in March was that we were looking to incorporate the gateway feature into the town square design. We wanted to consult with the Legion to move the cenotaph to a more appropriate location inside the square. We wanted to adjust the sidewalks for the natural path of travel to eliminate the likelihood of the worn trails that we see in a lot of our parks. We wanted to see permeable paving, rain gardens, LIDs incorporated. And then there was a suggestion that the hard surface around the bandstand be square, or instead of being square, be more rounded and softened, and that more gardens be added. So we've got, and the last point was that the parking lot was laid out more effectively. We've got a lot of that dead space right now where cars can't park. So from what I see, none of this has been incorporated, but we've had 2 tender packages we put out, neither of which have been successful. And now we're looking at it again. So I'm wondering, A, how much input do we actually have tonight? And B, can we consider the feedback that we gave the first time and get a design that really reflects how this space is going to be used and the best design for the purposes that we're putting forward for the town square.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Mcguire. I think that last question about how much influence do we have over the design now and how we move this file forward has kind of just been discussed by Councillor McKenna and Councillor Alfred. I think we can all agree that at this point, we'd like to see a final resolution by council that gives really clear direction. But you do raise a number of points that were, yes, discussed in open session by council, and tonight we will get the clear consensus in straw vote to either give staff direction to amend the design to include it or not. Councillor Brennan, your hand's up, so I'll let you speak to that, and then I'll call for one last round of comments, and then I'll call a straw vote on those itemized items, okay? Go ahead,
Yeah,
Jay.
thank you. This is my comment and my vote. I support staff's recommendation that council approve the draft final design for town square layout and bandstand. That's my vote.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, any other comments or discussion points from council? Seeing none, I'm gonna visible hands, not the emoji hands, okay? So Councillor Mcguire has suggested that we increase the height of the pavilion and add a more natural looking stone look to the foundation. Do I see any support? I see 3, okay. There was a suggestion that more natural meandering paths be laid out rather than something that's very angular. Do I see any recommendation or support for that? 1, I will actually support that. I think that was my original comment. But regardless, Mayor Pankow, is that a question or a vote?
A question, please.
Go
Okay, we have
ahead.
a discussion on that thought.
Yes, absolutely. If you'd like to discuss it, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I guess the contrast is, and I know we had the discussion back in spring. I mean, people will tend to follow the path from where they're coming to where they want to go. And so it's just a question of whether we see that being meandering pathways or angular like we have it. So I'm just interested in hearing some of the thoughts as to why it's been proposed that things be more meandering.
Thank you. Okay. Chris, I'll let you go first, and then Wendy, I did see your hand.
I guess personally, I think a wheel and a spoke design would probably serve the area more effectively than the pinwheel or meandering. The issues I see with this right now is if you come out of the library and you're trying to go to Elmsley Street or the bandstand, are you going to walk down and over, or are you just going to cut over through the grass? If you're coming from Daniel Street and trying to get to Tim Hortons, there's no direct path for you. It just doesn't seem to follow the travel directions that you see in the park now. So maybe something where you've got that rounded hub at the bandstand and then a couple paths that fan out from it would save us from having those mud paths through the park.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Wendy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't mind the pinwheel design. I think we don't know what the traffic patterns are going to be once this entire thing is finished. We've provided 1, 2, 3, 4 entrances towards the band shell and 1 from the parking lot, which will be important for any artists who are entertaining there. I'm going to support it as it is. Because again, we can, to some degree, with plantings, control where people go on the grass with trees and plantings. So I'm going to support staff as they presented it.
Thank you, Wendy. I'll jump in as someone who originally suggested this. I mean, the reason I suggested it in the spring, it came based on philosophy that was taught in urban design school. You know, the fact that things should have visual interest and tell a story and lead you literally down a path into a place of interest. But that said, I mean, it's stylistic, right? There isn't necessarily a right or a wrong. Our landscape architects at Lashley have determined that this very angular design is what's best for this particular site, and perhaps that is what's best. So I'll trust that that they've considered something that is reflective of not only paths of travel within the site based on common logic, but that architecturally this is going to make the most amount of sense once it's constructed. But part of me does think something more organic is probably a better fit, but that's okay. We'll hold that. Councillor McKenna.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. While we're into paths, I'll comment. I instinctively, having lived here all my life or around here, that's where people are going to enter the park. From the best of my knowledge, I think they've captured it. I also would encourage people to meander through this park. You aren't meant to stay on those paths. Take your blanket and go and sit down on the grass. I think Councillor Mcguire is pointing out, is there going to be a well-worn path somewhere that we didn't anticipate? It's possible, but I think coming off of Daniel, there's a pretty direct line to Beckwith Street and over to Tim Hortons and from the library. I can't think of any more angles that, so I think they're fine. And I do encourage people to wander around the grass and sit under the tree and walk through the park any way they like. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. Okay, so having flipped my vote, I don't think that we have support for moving this forward anymore. So I'm going to take that off the list. Councillor Mcguire's next point rather was the introduction of LIDs, or low impact design components to the design. I'll be honest, perhaps we can start with Mr. Manhart. I don't know that we have enough information to make that call at this point. Do we have stormwater infrastructure being added to the design?
There's no stormwater infrastructure in this design at all. It's actually designed.
So sorry, just to be clear, it's just going to be self-infiltrating within the site. There's no catch basin.
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay, so in that case, Councillor Mcguire, unless you know something to the contrary, and at this point it wouldn't qualify for LID design because there's no hard surface infrastructure or pipe infrastructure, I should say.
Yeah, so the LIDs don't, if you're building a commercial development or something, you can definitely use them as part of your plan for managing stormwater. But from my memory, the conversation we had back in March was more about using state-of-the-art technology in here as an example to show how it can work, show that permeable pavers or asphalt does a good job. I don't think it was ever considered as part of putting an underground stormwater management system in. But I think it is a best practice that increases infiltration and will reduce ponding in the park.
Acknowledged, and I think you're right. It might be helpful to have a piece of municipal infrastructure that showcases what LIDs can do. I don't know that this project is fitting for it beyond what's already there as far as soft infiltration. And maybe that's what we capitalize on. We talked about the fact that this is a park, a large park surface that doesn't need piped infrastructure to deal with its stormwater because it's already happening in place. Mr. Manhire, you have comments on that?
I just, something for feedback would be that the geotechnical survey for this area indicated that the bedrock is within about 18 inches of the surface in this area. So groundwater will be running off down through that, but there's not a lot of place for cooling at this point.
As it is throughout the entire town of Smith Falls. Okay, Mayor Pankow, I see your mic is off. Do you have comments? No? Okay, so I'll call for show of hands. Anybody supportive of introducing LIDs in this development? Seeing none. Okay, relocation of the cenotaph. I'm just going to start with a show of hands for that because my recollection was that in spring there was actually a great deal of consensus about that, at least facilitating the discussion with the Legion. Do we have consensus from the group to direct staff to have that conversation and where appropriate, relocate it? Councillor Brennan, you have a comment on that first?
Yeah, just a question. I think that I don't know what that's got to do with the town square. I mean, that was talked about at the gateway discussion. So I don't know why we're talking about that tonight. And of course, if we do talk about it, you need to talk to the Legion.
Yes, of course. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. But I do believe that it came up in relation to this discussion as well. But I think you're right. It came up as well when we talked about the gateway.
That's what it's got to do with. It's got nothing to do with the town square.
Councillor Alfred.
Madam Chair, I disagree. I think with or without the gateway, where if it is at the side of the library or not, that memorial would be best placed within the park itself.
Thank you. Mayor Pankow?
That was my thought as well.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to be efficient here. Mr. Manhire, have you had any conversations with the Legion to date at this point? Is there a reason that the design has not included the relocation?
As was mentioned, it's actually outside of the scope of this, and it was more around the Beckwith Street development. But I believe there have been conversations with the Legion about the potential for moving it. We weren't going to engage that until we had a design, but we can certainly do that.
Okay, so in that case, I will call for a show of hands, people, council's support for discussions about the relocation of the cenotaph from the far side of the library into the park. Hands up. For Mr. Manhire. Okay, two more points. One was the suggestion of more gardens. Councillor Mcguire, do you have anything specific that you want to add to that, or just more ornamental garden?
No, I was just summarizing points that were brought up in the last meeting. That was the one point that seemed to be addressed with the butterfly gardens. So I think you spoke to railway gardens in the last meeting if you wanted to elaborate.
I did. Again, that was probably one of my suggestions. I know the Railway Museum has long suggested that it would be nice to pay homage to the Victorian era gardens that are found at historic railway museums. And I thought, given the proximity this one holds to two primary stations in town, it would be nice to tie that together. But I think that's something that we can add after the fact. And I think you're correct, Councillor Mcguire, the addition of the butterfly gardens is certainly an effort to move that way. So perhaps next year we can compel Real to add 2 more butterfly gardens and we'll have lots. No, oh, Lorraine says no, too much work.
No, it's just we need space. We have to have space for people to sit and play. And I mean, if we just have gardens, where do people go?
Okay, acknowledge.
If you have a band playing or someone singing, where are people going to watch from? I mean, in the garden.
Acknowledged. Thank you. I'll call for a show of hands, but I feel like I know where this one's going. So support for more gardens. Seeing none, moving on. The last was the parking layout. Councillor Mcguire raised concerns about the configuration of the parking layout and its efficiency. Is there support from council to direct staff to look at a more efficient layout for the parking lot? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor McKenna.
It was just a question, Madam Chair, to town staff. The parking lot that we're looking at in the image with the grand scheme with the town hall and the library and all that, is that different than what is currently in place today?
Yes, it is. It reflects the area that was green space before that was claimed as parking area during the construction. So it just formalizes that space as well as a boulevard along Elmsley so that we're not just having sidewalk right to the parking area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mayor Panko?
Yeah, does the number of parking spots identified here meet the anticipated current and future needs of staff and visitors to this complex? We will have no parking out front, I assume, with the limited parking out front with the phase 2 at Becker Street.
Mr. Manhire? Oh, Mr. Morris, perhaps we'll start with you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in terms of Beckwith, the design does call for parallel parking in front of Town Hall. So it will be reduced from what's there, but there will be opportunities for short-term parkers to come in and access Town Hall. In terms of the adequacy of the rear, I would defer to Mr. Manhire on that one.
There's more space than we have current staff at Town Hall and visitor parking along with the fire department. So it increases capacity significantly.
Okay.
I don't have the exact numbers on hand right now, but I can get them for council if they want.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mcguire, I see your hand.
Thanks, Madam Chair. My count, there's 29 spots. I just don't see that being enough if we're having an event in the park. Or how many staff work at the town hall? Is 29 spots going to be enough for everybody?
There's fewer than 20 at Town Hall at this point.
Good thing we've all learned to adapt to work from home. I will also say I would like to hope, particularly as we are building a complete streets downtown, that perhaps visitors to our park will be making use of that complete street and not necessarily driving. But I think your point's well taken, Councillor Mcguire. But I will call for the straw hand of votes. I don't think we've got support for this. So calling for a vote from council to include a revised layout for the parking lot as part of the design. Just through our list of additions by Councillor Mcguire. Thank you for your patience. I am trying to draft a addition to the resolution as proposed by staff, and Nadine, I will email it to you if it is indeed successful here. But I'm going to read the recommendation from staff with the only supporting addition that council voted on tonight. But perhaps before I do that, is there anyone else, because this is the last time we're discussing it, any other comments? CAO Morris.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to go back to the cenotaph discussion, just to make sure we're all perfectly clear. My recollection from the Beckwith Gateway discussion was that the cenotaph would only be required to be removed, or relocated rather, is if we put the gateway feature on the east side of Beckwith. It would not necessarily need to be relocated if council eventually decides to put the gateway feature on the west side. Naturally, we didn't conclude that discussion. We will bring that back to seek clarity. But I just want to make sure I understood tonight's discussion. It sounded to me, what I heard was we want to look at relocating it in any event, irrespective of what we do on Beckwith.
Okay. Thank you for the point of clarification. That too was my understanding, but I saw Councillor McKenna shake his head. So my understanding and the way I'm drafting this addition on the fly is that we are suggesting that cenotaph, where supported by the Legion, go to the park, or we at least engage them in that discussion, notwithstanding whatever we decide with the gateway sign. So Councillor McKenna, you shook your head. I'm going to go to you first, and then I'm going to go to Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't mean to be so rude by shaking my head. I should have put my hand up. I think C.O. Morris has said it, sure, we can ask the Legion if we ever decided to move it. A lot will depend on where it's going if they're going to have that conversation. But there's no sense having that conversation if we don't need to move it if we don't have to. But it doesn't hurt to ask them, would you be open to having that down the road? I'm not a big fan of putting the gateway feature there. So I'm in no hurry. But if to ask them, would they be open to it if we got to that point? Sure, you can have that conversation. Absolutely. But there's nothing imminent. Maybe there's a better place for it to go.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor McKenna. Councillor Brennan, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I agree. The last time I checked on this plan here, there's no cenotaph in the plan. There's no cenotaph in the plan. I mean, and we talked about it when we talked about the Beckwith Street thing and where we're going to put the gateway. I'm not opposed to putting it there, and if that's the case, then we'll talk to the Legion. But what we're talking about tonight is the final draft design for the town square layout and bandstand. Cenotaf's not in there. So I support staff's recommendation here, and we don't need to even go there right now. If we need to, we will.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from council on that? Councillor Mcguire.
Yeah, I definitely still agree with it. I think that that's the best place for the gateway feature. And I think that if we incorporate it into the design now, if the Legion's willing and interested in that, we can find a much better location for it. That's gives a place for reflection. And I think that especially since we're bulldozing over the gardens in front of the library, according to this plan, and there's prime real estate there. So why not have the conversation now? We know that that is the best place for the gateway feature on the other side of the library.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mcguire. Councillor Alfred?
I think for possibly the first time this evening so far, I'm going to agree with Councillor Mcguire on that.
Okay, Councillor Allen, your hand's up. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Allen?
Yes, I agree with that too.
Oh, sorry, no further comment then?
No, I just agree.
Thank you. Okay, Mayor Pankow?
I'll be the fourth one on that one.
Lordy. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. We have a resolution from staff. I'm going to call for direction from council to move that forward, and then I will read the and that comes after that and call for support from council on the and that pertaining to the Senate. Seem reasonable. Recommendation from staff that's on the table tonight is that Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls approve an exemption from the procurement policy to allow staff to solicit competitive quotes for work to complete the hardscape work for pathways, light standards, and bandstand base for the town square design. And Nadine, I'm going to add the words as presented. Does that seem so that there's no further confusion? Madam Clerk?
Oh, sorry, I said yes, that's perfect.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so I'll call for a show of hands on that. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, the second point for discussion. And Nads, I will send this to you, but I've written and that Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls directs staff to engage with the Legion regarding the possible relocation of the cenotaph located at the intersection of Elmsley and Beckwith Streets, should the need arise resulting from the, I stopped mid-sentence, sorry, resulting from the works pertaining to the gateway feature. Does that seem reasonable? Sort of, yes, okay. So I'll call for a show of hands on that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, perfect. So Nadine, I will send you my half completed sentence for you to correct when it gets to final recommendation. But council, I think we made that through that somewhat unscathed. Congratulations. I'm really proud of us. Mr. Mcguire, thank you for your patience. And with that, you are not going anywhere because item 8.4 is also with you. So 8.4 is the exemption for the procurement policy for hardscape works. Oh, is that just what I read? Am I reading the wrong? Oh, sorry, guys. So close. Okay, what was the first resolution? That council approved the draft final design for the town square layout and bandstand. Oh, that would have made sense. Then I didn't need the as presented component. Okay, can I see a show of hands for that resolution too? Thank you. I'm so sorry. Okay, Mr. Mcguire, is that sufficient for your needs? We've got all those boxes ticked. I'm not missing anything. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, so we will move back up our agenda to items 8.1 and 8.2. 8.1 is the monitoring of the downtown and waterfront area community improvement plan. This report is with Mr. Grenke, and I believe that Ms. Remig is also on the call to take questions from council. So Carl, I'll let you start. Any new or pertinent information that you would like to point out?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. Staff are pleased to bring forward the program review and end of term monitoring report for the Downtown Waterfront Community Improvement Plan. So CIPs, of course, are an important tool that we have to provide additional support and leverage municipal investment to achieve certain gains in the community. And council, as you know, has been investing money every year into our downtown CIP since 2015. And we are, of course, at the stage now where we have to take a deeper dive into the plan and its operations to confirm whether it is working as intended. So as the chair noted, joining me this evening is planning coordinator Mary Remig. She's been working very diligently and hard with the CIP applicants as well as the committee and has taken the lead on this report and review. So the CIP is intended to promote economic sustainability and quality of life in the downtown core. And as noted in the plan, the core is an important economic center of the town. The improved health and state of which will enhance its role as a commercial, residential, shopping, and civic hub for the community. And that's why the downtown was initially targeted for this and why it remains relevant today. As in our opinion, there are certain locational specific challenges and opportunities here. So the report details the application processes that follow when a proposal is received, the time it takes to be approved, and also outlines some of the promotions we have seen. And the report details some feedback that we've received from the business community and those who've worked with the process. Some of the challenges they have identified included what were perceived as excessive application requirements, including multiple quotations as informed by municipal procurement policy and application timelines, especially when a few revisions have had to have been undertaken. Well, some of this can't be helped given that we are working with municipal dollars. Staff have also zeroed in on the operational and processing aspect, and we have been working with the committee and other staff to explore different approaches. If we continue with the CIP, this work will, of course, need to continue as we need to ensure that our expectations and practices and the stated policy align. So there's also a common thread that there is not a consistent and sustained promotional piece associated with the CIP over the years. So the broader awareness may not have been what it could have been. So the report summarizes and explains the outcomes of the 4 programs that we have used, including the first 3 that council has seen most regularly. And just to quickly summarize program 1, the facade enhancement program has invested a total of just under $92,000 since 2015, which is help leverage about $218,000 in private sector investments into improvements, primarily to local businesses. And this has included larger scale full facade reconfigurations, as well as smaller things like signs. And committee members have suggested investigating more closely aligning the CIP policies with the downtown core design guidelines to provide more precise direction in terms of what do we want to see. And we've had some very good discussions within the committee, around the committee table as to what it is that we want to see, but I think we've all identified a need for certainty in policy and expectations. A flexible eligibility criteria that we have now gives leeway and can be advantageous at times, but our review suggests that refinement would be advisable. Program 2 supports interior renovations to buildings with an eye to making them usable, functional, and safe. And improvements, of course, have covered accessibility, wiring, and other enhancements to allow a space to be used by new tenants and also hopefully in the future. Council has invested $120,000 in Program 2, which has also leveraged about $506,000 in private sector investment. Some of the challenges the committee has identified include administration of a loan, particularly when the property changes hands, and some suggestions were made. Program 3 supports building and planning fee rebates to make development applications more affordable to applicants. About $3,200 has been invested in this program since inception and has often been applied for almost as an aside or add-on to the more substantial interior or exterior renovations. The incentive program is inclusive of a wide variety of Planning Act application, causing a lack of focus for the program. In turn, the program has been broadly applied and is often used to leverage improvements requiring building permits. And the review has identified clarity in terms of what it is that we want to see as a good Program 3. We have one Program 4 being that's been through the approval process, the tax abatement, and this is an important program and quite common in other equivalent CAPs. And the program is in place to support exactly the kind of development and investment that we've seen with Hotel Rideau. There's 2 additional brownfield programs, but they weren't evaluated as we haven't as they haven't been used to date. So from the launch of the CIP program, we have budgeted over $200,000 to administer the suite of programs, with most of that being released, and a remaining $25,000 to administer the incentives for this year. So Community Improvement Plan outlines the variables to be measured and recorded for each incentive program. These are intended to evaluate the success of the incentive programs. Variables for the full suite include the number of applications submitted, the number of successful applications submitted, and the qualitative assessment of the quality of improvements when the intended work is complete. Some of the challenges we've had in undertaking a qualitative assessment of the downtown as it relates to the CAP is in terms of assembling an apples to apples comparison of the measurement of unit and square footage vacancies in the project area over the years, relying on information available to the DBA and the Sierra report and what we can find now. The freeze in assessments also encumbers our ability to really assess the evolution in property values downtown over the last several years. Broadly speaking, a community improvement plan and funding decisions have contributed to the vitality of the downtown core and have supported the expansion and establishment of a number of businesses, a few of which have actually expanded over the years. And released funding has supported private sector investment value of about 3.8 times the CAP investment. So it has incented private sector investment, and signage and landscaping improvements complement the public investment in the streetscape. The CAP Evaluation Committee has also helpfully provided feedback based on their experience in working with a CAP. This includes suggestions to more concisely focus the programs available to clarify what's considered to comply and be a good application, which will help us further update the evaluation matrix. A number of other suggestions were made relating to committee membership, application requirements, and processing. Ultimately, all of these were hoping to make the process more user-friendly as much as possible. Some of the points suggest different solutions and policy approaches from each other, and that reflects feedback from individual members. And this, of course, will be considered by council if and when we do a review. The report also includes some procedural enhancements, including the initiation of an annual application deadline to allow for concurrent evaluation and decisions all at once. Ultimately, these sorts of procedural decisions would be made in time with the goal of enhancing the promotion of the program and the efficiency of application timelines. The CAP was originally created when Smith Falls was in a somewhat different place economically to where we are now. At that point, we were coming on the heels of industry closures and some real concerns about where our downtown was going to look like in the coming years. Today, we're seeing both public sector and private sector investment in and close to the downtown, which presents us a real opportunity to ensure that our investments in built form enhancements and policies relating to community improvement align with council's vision for what you want to see. In summary, we feel the CAP we have now prescribes some very helpful and timely assistance to promote regeneration within the core. However, there's some areas where we feel it can be more concisely focused. I think it's fair to say from my conversations with colleagues and committee members, we all want our community improvement plan to be something that we would be proud of. CIP applications are intended to be looked at through a bit of a different big picture lens than other Planning Act applications where there's a detailed and prescribed process, prescribed rights and obligations. But we're also working with municipal funds that warrant important attention, and we continue to try to find that right balance. At this juncture, staff are not looking for council to commit to a specific suite of enhancements or to a particular work plan or budget in a CIP update. However, we do see council's broad direction on whether a community improvement plan is something that you would like to see in your policy docket moving forward. The CIP we have now has some good bones, but it needs an update and refresh. And that's a positive and normal thing after working with the first one for a few years. And staff are looking for council's concurrence that the refresh and update is something you'd like to do. Once we have your direction, we will come back to you with a more detailed path forward on that. In the meantime, we do have about $25,000 remaining in this year's budget, and staff are recommending that we keep the programs open for the moment, as we do have applications in process and another one anticipated that were submitted based on the programs currently in effect. With that in mind, I would like to thank Planning Coordinator Remig, as well as the CIP Evaluation Committee for their work. The report being presented is the product of a considerable amount of consultation of the committee and other departments, and we welcome council's direction on the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Ms. Remig, do you have anything that you'd like to add at this point to your report?
I don't, but thank you.
No problem. It's not often we get to see you, so I figured I'd offer you the opportunity. Okay, so I see a lot of hands. I acknowledge your hands. We're going to start with Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, and thank you, Carl, for the report. Excellent report, and it really gives a snapshot. And I have to agree with you when you talk about when we started the CIP committee or program, the town was a lot different, and I think it bears a re-examination. I've got some thoughts on that. I don't think that that's for tonight, though. I think that the recommendation is we receive the report. Let's keep it going for the remainder of 2021. And then I would agree with direct staff to undertake policy and program update using that information, and then come back with feedback from us. But excellent report. And I do think that we need to do some tweaking on this, but I look forward to your research and coming back to us on it. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Councillor McKenna, I saw your hand next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two, it was a very comprehensive report, as Councillor Brennan's pointed out. Mr. Grenke, on page 8, when we talk about, I guess, program 5 and 6, mostly focused on environmental assessment or environmental remediation, and that there has been no uptake. I think it didn't come out in the report the way you said it. I think you said because no one has used it, there wasn't any data to evaluate it. Is that in itself a reason to evaluate it? If people haven't used it, is there anything that we're aware of, a barrier in the way of that being used? Just because it hasn't been utilized, I think it still warrants a review. There may be features to it that some businesses have decided not to use it because it wasn't whatever. Just because it wasn't used, I'd still encourage you to take a deep look at it, or look at some other municipalities. It may also be that in our downtown and in our waterfront, there aren't as many, let's say, brown sites or environmentally tough areas, but I don't know that. So I would just encourage you to do that review as well, even though no one has used it. Thank you.
Thank you. Carl, do you have anything to add to that point?
Yes, I think, thank you, Councillor. I think it is, you're absolutely correct. There are not a lot of situations, I think, where that program would be used. I think similar to program 4, I think it's important and valuable to have. I think most similar, I think a brownfield redevelopment CIP is fairly I've seen many different examples of them. So I think it's almost standardized, but it's not expected that it would be often used because there's not a lot of brownfield properties. But if the situation were to arise or an application would be made, I think it would be very helpful to have it to support that kind of development that otherwise would be very expensive. So it is certainly not a recommendation of staff that we discontinue a brownfield program. However, if council elects to continue with it with the downtown CIP, certainly that would be a piece that we want to make sure is best targeted.
Thank you, Carl. Brownfields are kind of like a planner's unicorn. We're always chasing them and hoping that they redevelop, and having the suite of tools there to make it possible is a good idea. I get what Councillor McKenna is saying, though, that if we're opening up the review and it's been 5 years, perhaps it's worth taking a look at those policies just to make sure that they are updated and consistent with kind of industry standard, especially as the EPA has changed. But maybe something to look at. Councillor Alfred?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to take a different kind of approach because the recommendations are outlined there. I've gone back and I've watched multiple CIP meetings, and so I have a flavor for the struggles that the committee has gone through with regard to policy and trying to be objective. And so I'm going to suggest that we look at option number 2, which is start the undertaking of the policy work that needs to be done as quickly as possible so that we can be better prepared for 2022. I know that if there are any new ones that they're fairly recently received, because I've been watching the CIP meetings, and I'm going to suggest to my colleagues that if we keep going, we would have October, November, December to work on policy. And that 25K that is in the, and I'm not sure the treasurer could advise, but if that could be flipped to getting, possibly hiring a consultant to help with policy, because some of this policy will have to come from council. And so if we wait till the first of the year to begin that process, then we have shortened the, we've further added to the confusion and subjectivity that it currently is present at the CIP committee, where we could be getting to that policy work now, and so be much better prepared for 2022. I think also there should be maybe 1 or 2 intakes per year on this, rather than just first come first serve, which is again difficult for staff and the committee to sometimes manage. So I'm going to suggest that my colleagues entertain ceasing the CIP program for the rest of this year and redeploying the 25,000 to get some horsepower in terms of human resources in to start working on this policy earlier rather than wait until 2022 or whenever it can be worked into a work plan.
Okay.
That's my
Thank
comments.
You, Wendy. Anyone else? Councillor Mcguire? Uh-oh, did I freeze? Yes, okay, Councillor Mcguire.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks a lot, Mary and Carl. This has been a long time coming, and I know you guys have a full workload, and this is it was a lot of work in between. So thanks a lot for bringing it tonight. Councillor Alfred brings up an interesting idea. I think it's a great idea. I wish I came up with it. I think we've all seen the struggles we've been having with gray policy and a lot of open-ended criteria, and the town's changed so much that what are the goals that we're really trying to accomplish with this? Like to Councillor McKenna's point with the, I think it was the brownfields, maybe something like that's better in an affordable housing CIP that we're looking at with the housing task force, because any brownfield in town should get some support to get redeveloped. So I would definitely support, let's take a pause from the CIP for now. Let's put that money towards this. But I'm assuming that means when it says council direct staff to undertake a policy and program update, when staff are so busy as you guys are right now, does that imply that we're hiring an outside consultant to do that work? And just please confirm that.
Carl?
That would be a recommendation that we'll be making.
Just sorry for clarity, regardless of when we start the work, Carl?
So I think,
Yes.
at this
Okay.
point, yes, that would be our recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
So I think
Councillor Mcguire, anything else?
Yeah, thanks, sir, Madam Chair. I think we've got, we know we've got a problem. We know we need to put some time and money into this. Let's take the 35,000 that's left and get to work.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Panko, I see your hand, and then Councillor Allen, I acknowledge yours as well.
I'm agreeable with accelerating basically redesign, reconsideration of the components of the plan and how we would deliver it. I'm just a little hesitant to utilize the money we have sitting in this year's, but mainly in this year's budget, understanding there are applications in the queue, people who've committed time and energy and probably some of their own money to get to the point where they can submit an application, only to find out now that the money may not be available. So my preference would be that we would maintain the money in the fund for the balance of 2021 and have staff come back with a recommended plan to accelerate the redraft, redevelopment review of the plan with some costing. Understanding we are almost October and the possibility of simply using some reserves and or pre-budget approval for 2022 to get that moving. I think there's widespread consensus to get it moving. I just don't want to leave some people who are anticipating these funds short in 2021.
Thank you, Sean. Just to clarify, that's option 1, correct? Would be your support?
Yes, but maybe a little bit more definition to when they would undertake the update. So
okay.
Sooner.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Allen, and then Councillor Alfred, I see your hand again.
Yeah, no, I like Councillor Mcguire. I wished I had thought of Councillor Alfred's idea too, because I'm struggling with this. I know there's been a lot of a lot of angst and a lot of time put into these, and so many people are hoping to get some incentives to work on their buildings and so forth. I think it would be worthwhile to take a pause and get some advice and maybe hire that person with the money and just see how that can improve what we're doing. I think it's a good program, and I think it's done a lot of good things for the downtown, but I also think that there are some ways we could improve it and make it an easier program for people that are looking after it.
Okay, thank you, Lorraine. Councillor Alfred?
Just to speak to Mayor Panko's, and I know from watching it, most of these have been recently received that might be in the queue. I also know how long the approvals process takes, and part of that is the approval for ones that are in the queue could go faster if we get this policy work done than it's currently taking to go through the vetting, the pre-consultation, all of that. So I think we really need to press pause on this and get our policy work done, get our house in order, and be ready to go in January 2022, if at all possible. One more question I have actually I'm not sure whether it's for Malcolm or staff. Does anything with regard to the CIP, could any of that be funded out of the building reserve? How is this time that staff time and so on and so forth that we dedicate from planning staff? Has there been any? Is that even possible?
CIO Morris?
Through the chair, yeah, that's an intriguing question. I don't have an answer, but I would submit that the criteria around using the building reserve is describe it as loose. But I mean, the difference here really is it's less of a it's more of a planning function than it is a building. We're helping to build other people's buildings, but so it's an intriguing question, and we'll take it back and have a look at it and see if
Well, if I could just one more, Madam Chair, because
Yes.
some of these programs are with regard to building permits. And forgiveness for that. So I just want to make sure if there's an opportunity here, because we have a healthy reserve in the building reserve, that if some of this money could be redeployed and taken from there as opposed to an operational budget, that's would be something I would hope that, oh, I know now that I've mentioned it, that the staff will be looking at that. So I appreciate that. It occurred to me as I was going through all of this. And again, Madam Chair, I'll reserve any more comments. That was just one where I was curious.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McKenna, but sorry, Peter, before you start, can I just have a show of hands? Who hasn't spoken on this item yet? We've all spoken except for myself. Okay, perfect. Councillor McKenna, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just thinking practically about Councillor Alford's suggestion, and even if staff had it in mind already to use a consultant to help them with the review work, if council agreed, and I think we do. Practically speaking, to put the RFP together, it is October, to get it out, to get a return on that, we are probably looking at the new year anyways. So I don't know how practical we can accelerate it anyways, even if we wanted to. So I like the idea. So then if it's going to happen in January anyways, should we pause it? Because that's a bigger question and it doesn't have to be related. Is it so unwieldy that we shouldn't continue? And I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing lately it's been frustrating. I think we need to do some work on a process. I like the plan. I like as Mr. Granke said, it's got really good bones. So I don't want to throw it out. The tweaking, the improvement is what it needs. And I'm all for that. I just don't know, even if we ask staff to accelerate it, that we would get it any sooner than what maybe they had in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to go ahead and provide my own 2 cents, and then I think, with the exception of Councillor Brennan, actually, I've got everybody's kind of options recorded here. So Jay, I'll ask you to confirm after this, but I like Councillor McKenna. I'm of the opinion that as much as I would love to see this expedited, I think we probably should have expedited this straight to consultants last year and saved ourselves a lot of time and frustration over the last year. I think at this point, it's not practical for us to try and rush this to be back in play for 2022. I think we have published an acceptance of applications or application intake, and we need to fulfill that this year. Program next year, while it gives us time to sit back and take a look at what's been done to date. Sorry, I've got different people's boxes lighting up. Am I paused right now? Can you hear me? I'm not frozen. I'm good. Okay, sorry. The internet's really bad tonight. I was paused.
Yes, you were frozen. You're back now.
Shoot, sorry guys. Okay, so yeah, I'm supportive of fulfilling our obligations this year and trying to find a consultant next year. I think Peter makes a good point. We're not going to find somebody this late in the season, and even if we do, by the time we get an RFP together, and it cause Janet the stress of trying to find 30K in the budget to make this possible, I think it's better that we park it as part of the capital discussion for next year. And rather than putting $50,000 in the budget to spend on applications next year, we spend that instead on an uptake or an update rather of this program. So I'm seeing kind of a mixed bag. I'm going to ask Jay to weigh in on what his preferred option is, but I think actually we have consensus for option 1, but Sean would like to see a revised timeline for the return for the policy update. So Councillor Brennan, your recommendation?
Sort of say option one. I did say option one, and I think it's high time to have a look at this again. However, I agree with the mayor. There's stuff in the queue, and it's on the it's coming up, and it's sort of backhanded to put a pause on it now. And but there's a lot has changed in Smith Falls since this began, and it's high time to have a look at it. And I agree with what you just said, Councillor Mcguire. I agree with every word.
Okay, thank you. The other piece that I had flagged and then I got frazzled there. Updating a CIP like this is not a quick and easy project. These documents are similar to an official plan. So there's statutory obligations to go through an amendment process. So even if we did decide to hire a consultant and wham bam, thank you ma'am, punch out a policy by the end of the year, we still have to undertake public meetings and open houses and gather feedback and show how we're being responsive to that. So I think if anything, there's a need to be pensive about this and decide without pressure of a timeline what it is we're doing. Sorry, those are my concluding remarks. Carl, I see your hand up, although I've lost your video. Did you want to jump in with comments here?
Yes, thank you. I had to turn the video off. I was having a little bit of I was having interruptions as well, and I thought I'd be able to hear better with the with being off screen. But just to speak to the process and next steps, Director Costello will be bringing forward a report shortly with respect to the implementation and next steps on the affordable housing CIP. And then we are investigating sort of if there's a way that can be harmonized. And before we can do that, we were looking for council's direction on whether council wanted to proceed with an updated downtown CIP. So I think I expect we will have a report with more detailed timelines and costings presented within the next couple of meetings.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Carl. Councillor Mcguire, you've got comment?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I was wondering how many applications do we have in the queue right now?
Carl or Mary?
So there is currently one application in the queue. This application though is for a program 5 application. So this would be our first kick at the can on that one. There's also a program 1 associated with that. And currently the developer is also looking at adding a program 4.
So there's nothing in the queue right now. This program's always been first come, first served. So as soon as the money runs out, it's over. So I think I don't see the same reasons for not shutting it down tonight. I think program 5 doesn't come out of the $50,000 budget. It's a big one like the Rito Hotel was that's still ongoing. I think it's a great time to shut the queue down. We keep throwing good money after a bad program. We need to do this work, and if we save this money for next year, it's still in reserve for next year. So I don't share those concerns about keeping the queue open right now.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mcguire. I'll call for one last round of comments, but I believe otherwise, Mary and Carl, option 1 in your staff report. I'm not going to go ahead and read that again for fear of reading the wrong staff report again, but I think everybody knows what we're doing. Anybody else have comments or questions at this point? Councillor Alford.
Madam Chair, just could you clarify, because when you were making your comments, are you suggesting that we're gonna, if we don't start the policy work till January and hire some consultant or start the tender process, or don't even start that until January 1? I think I may have misunderstood, but did you say if we put 50,000 into it next year to do all that work, would we still have a CIP running next year or not?
Thank you for the opportunity to clarify. No, my opinion is that it would make more sense to discontinue the use of the program next year, to take a pensive pause without applications in the queue influencing the types of decisions that we are making on the policy update, and instead use the funds that we would typically put into the reserve instead to fund the consulting fees to update the program.
Okay, I did get that right. I wasn't sure. And again, I am not supportive of option 1. I would say that I would pick option 2 again. And that in that, if that were done, then we would have time to make those decisions like the one that you're suggesting.
Thank you, Councillor Alfred. Okay, notwithstanding those comments, I don't believe that changes the majority support to move forward with option 1. So Carl and Mary, you have your direction. I don't believe, based on the wording of this resolution, that this is coming forward as a resolution or bylaw. It's just staff direction, and we'll await further report from you about next steps. Okay, moving forward on the agenda. Janet, thank you for your patience. It's been a long night. You're talking about the August budget monitoring report.
Madam Chair, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Could you just do the straw vote again, because my count may have been different than yours?
Yes, with Janet's permission. So I will read option 1 again, and then I'll call the straw vote. So option 1 in Mary's staff report was that council received this report for information, and that council support continued efforts to promote and administer the incentive program available through the CIP for the remainder of the 2021 year using the existing budget, and that council directs staff to undertake a policy and program update for the CIP using the information contained in this report to guide such work. So I'll ask for a show of hands on that, please. So I see 4. Peter had his hand up and then down, but even without Peter, we still had 4. So
Thank you,
I believe we're going forward.
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I just had a question if I,
Oh, yes,
on
absolutely.
that. It was that it's silent on pausing the program next year, that resolution.
That is correct.
So, which is getting closer to what Councillor Mcguire and Councillor Alfred were hoping for. So, and that's only January. It's using the money we've got left to the end of the year, and then it would be on if we haven't. We're silent on whether it's paused for next year because of the review. So I'm okay with that.
Okay, yeah, sorry. In my mind, I was thinking that would be subject to budget discussions. And then at that time, we could decide whether or not we're putting funds in for 2022. Carl, does that make sense to you?
Yes, that was my intention. Our 2022, we'd be looking at that through the budget process.
Okay. I think I see mostly nodding heads, but it's getting late and I'm on my 3rd cup of coffee. So Janet, back to you. You're doing August budget monitoring. Are we receiving this for information? Please say yes.
We are. Yes. Thank
Okay,
you, Madam
thank you.
Chair. I'll keep it brief. So I am just here for the high level of August budget monitoring. We, as indicated in my report, we're still projecting a overall surplus, albeit down slightly from last month, for 668,000. So one thing I did want to elaborate on page 2 of my report, I've given you the balances of the various stabilization reserves. Our tax support, it is almost at the point of the maximum threshold. So if indeed our surplus continues to the end of the year, which I assume it will, the majority of that surplus will go into the capital reserve. So I just wanted to bring council up to date, and that's as per our reserve policy. So that's something I just wanted to further delve into for you.
Thank you, Janet. Questions, comments? Nothing? We love it. Thanks, Janet. You're so good to us. Next time when I amend the agenda, I'll make sure you're item number 1, okay? My bad. Okay, now that does bring us to the end of the agenda, but perhaps the 3rd cup of coffee has enlightened me to the fact that there were 2 things that I wanted to raise at the end of priority items. So council, bear with me. One is an announcement that there was a scheduled council meeting to follow this meeting it has been canceled. And Nadine, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe the website actually confirms that. So public watching at home, please be aware that we are not going into a council meeting next. But at that council meeting, we were going to receive an update from Mayor Pankow about the events to occur later this week. So with council's indulgence, I'd ask that we add opportunity for Mayor Pankow to describe events to occur later this week from Truth and Reconciliation Day. I haven't seen any nodding heads, but I'm going to go with yes. Sean, do you want to? Yes, thank you.
Sorry, yes, thank you. The press release went out earlier today. And so the event is planned for the evening, or Friday evening, October 1st. And people are invited to gather in Centennial Park on the water side, so not crossing Confederation Drive, around 6:15. Approximately 6:30, the procession will be going from there along the waterfront to the pedestrian bridges crossing over to Duck Island, where a ceremony and service and prayer, a smudging, some drumming will take place as an act of reconciliation to honor the lost residential school children as part of our efforts for Truth and Reconciliation Week. You are invited to wear orange, as we all are this evening, and you're welcome to bring a solar light for the procession. We'll be leaving at about just about dusk, and following the ceremony, people will be invited to move about Duck Island and be welcome to leave behind their solar light in memory of a lost residential school child.
Thank you, Sean. Council, do you have any questions or comments for Mayor Pankow? Councillor McKenna.
Thank you to all the folks who helped organize that, Mayor Pankow. And I just wanted to go back to the start of our meeting, and you probably will do this already, Mayor Pankow, but to formally thank Mr. Commanda for that really eloquent, one, for preparing it, and two, for reading it. I think saving that recording, it was very, very powerful, and keeping that around. And hopefully, I don't know if he's invited this Friday, but it would be nice to see him there. So thanks for the organizers of the event, and I'll see you there Friday night.
Great. Of course, everyone is welcome to join us.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further comments or questions, we are at item number 9 on the agenda, adjournment. That the committee adjourn its proceedings at 6:44 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Mcguire, seconded by Councillor Alfred. All those in favor? Fabulous. Thank you all. Have a good night. We'll see you on Friday.
Good evening.